President Trump has soared to one of his highest approval ratings ever. All the while, the Democrats suffered one of the most embarrassing and humiliating weeks imaginable. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Biden speech that mercifully ended the Democrat Cringevention, how the media is doing everything they can to spin it into a success, and how, to the shock of pollsters and pundits alike, President Trump is currently ending the week with one of his highest approval ratings ever. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Patriots all across the globe. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. If you're new to our channel, we analyze current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It's been an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of our channel, where each and every day we together celebrate the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Now, before we jump into things here, we, of course, are in an election year, and of all of our presidential elections, few were as stunning as the election of Donald Trump 4 years ago. The mass surge of nationalist populism that swept him into the Oval Office shocked both pollsters and pundits alike, and 2020 will be no exception. But how could so many of our elites, from the mainstream media to political pundits, how could so many of them have been so wrong in 2016, still not get it in 2020? Well, that is what my book, President Trump and Our Post-Secular Future, explores. In its pages, you're going to discover precisely what our political class miss and continue to miss. The election of Donald Trump was nothing less than a symptom of the collapse of secular globalism as our dominant political paradigm. And so throughout this book, you're going to learn about the worldwide clash between globalism and nationalism. You're going to discover how the alternative media has successfully replaced the mainstream Marxist media for a growing number of voters. And you'll discover the various ways in which Trump's nationalist populism is redefining politics for the foreseeable future. And to make it even better, you ready for this? How's this for you? If you click on that link down below, for a limited time, you can get my book, President Trump and Our Post-Secular Future, absolutely free as an ebook download. That's right, absolutely free. Our gift to you. But this is a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click on that link below. Get your free copy of my book, President Trump and Our Post-Secular Future. And together, let's make 2020 the biggest celebration yet for nationalism, populism, and traditionalism. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Oh, man, the Democrat Convention has mercifully come to an end. It was, by all accounts, it was a complete and total disaster. It's been rightly dubbed the Cringevention. It was likened to an extended YouTube ad at the beginning of a video that you just want to skip, and that was from a liberal. No amount of gaslighting from the left-wing activists disguised as journalists could even come close to convincing the vast majority of those who tuned in that it was other than an epic failure. It was a calamity convention, and there was really very little that our political class could do to convince anyone otherwise. It's like having to explain a joke, right? If you have to explain a joke, it isn't funny. If you have to explain to someone why they ought to like a song, then obviously the song isn't likable. If it can't stand on its own merits, no amount of spin is going to save it. And that's precisely what happened to the DNC this week. It was an unmitigated disaster, and the viewership proves it. We did a video on the ratings for the first night of the Cringevention just a couple of days back. It was embarrassing. I mean, viewership was down nearly 30% from their last convention, 2016. Now, that's bad enough, but look at what happened. Look, on the second night, look at this. Viewership imploded nearly 50% from the previous convention in 2016. Gang, you cannot spin that. They lost 30% of their viewers on the first night, and then things were so bad, they lost another 50% the next night. Seriously, how do you spin that into a success? I mean, how do you even come close to convincing people that the Cringevention was worth watching when no one wanted to watch it? Well, this is the mode that the mainstream Marxist media has been in all week, and nowhere are they having to gaslight more than Joe Biden's speech last night. Now, of course, Sleepy Joe gave his acceptance speech, and frankly, I have never seen such low expectations, which frankly you would have to have been incapacitated not to have fulfilled. The embarrassingly low bar set for Biden was not whether he could rouse the troops and unify the party. That's the media's job. It wasn't even whether he could deliver a good speech. Gang, it is widely acknowledged that the bar for Biden to pass was so embarrassingly low that it was simply whether he could deliver a speech at all. Michael Goodwin, New York Post, put it best. The question was not whether Biden could actually manage to get through a speech, a national speech to unify people. It was whether he could get through it cleanly, coherently, without mumbling, without bumbling, without that bizarre dazed look in his eyes. It's widely agreed that he did manage to do that. He got through his speech relatively cleanly. Democrats were certainly relieved at that. He did have a major brain freeze at the end. He told the nation that there's, quote, never been anything we've been able to accomplish when we've done it together. I mean, he's the gift that keeps on giving. There's never been anything we've been able to accomplish when we've done it together. But given what his supporters feared, which was a total train wreck, that would have been their worst nightmare, such a flub was hardly significant. So he cleared the lowest bar imaginable. But now that he's cleared a bar that could have been set for a 12-year-old, right, getting through a speech without collapsing, now that that bar has been passed, people are starting to recognize, that there's not a whole lot of good that did. It's not really going to help you, to give a speech that was banal and so empty and platitudes and light versus darkness, unity versus division. And Trump showed us why. He immediately chimed in as Biden was speaking, bringing up the elephant in the room. Trump tweeted out, in 47 years, Joe did none of the things of which he now speaks. He will never change, just words. And Trump's not alone in that assessment. This is precisely what many on the left have been saying, particularly the Bernie bros. They've been saying it for the whole campaign. Biden says a lot, but he didn't do anything in the last 40 years. How come you didn't do any of the things that you're now promising to do? You've got a near 50-year record in Washington. And look at our nation. We're more divided than ever. You have the massive wealth gap. You were there for 2 terms, and then we got Trump as a result. You shipped our jobs overseas. You kept the borders open for anyone and everyone who just wanted to waltz right in. How on earth can you plausibly present yourself as an agent of change? And so it's no surprise that a massive number of Bernie bros simply despise Biden. Only 21% of Sanders voters have a very favorable view of Biden. That's nearly 80% disapproval of Biden to at least some extent. Not good. Remember, during the primary, an ABC News poll during the Democrat primary found that 15% of Bernie supporters would vote for Trump if Biden is the nominee. And that is no mere empty threat. That is exactly what happened to Hillary. In that case, it was 10% of Bernie supporters who ended up voting for Trump. These were leftist populists who simply voted for the populist right. In other words, they were populists. And they voted for the populist candidate who was going to shake up Washington. So this is not an empty threat. This is real. And Biden did absolutely nothing in last night's speech to assuage the concerns of Bernie voters. He made no mention of any real far-left policy that would have attracted a Bernie voter. He didn't assuage Ocasio-Cortez. Rashida Tlaib didn't come out and endorse him as of yet. Again, when the only expectation you have to clear is to simply deliver an intelligible speech without sputtering and mumbling, the inevitable and rather predictable aftermath of having passed such an embarrassingly low bar is going to eventually catch up with Biden and his supporters, and it already is. Now, right after Trump tweeted out his dig at Biden, he couldn't help himself. He tweeted out another amazing development in the area of polling. On the day of Biden's speech, Trump was enjoying one of his highest approval ratings in the last several weeks. Rasmussen has Trump at 51% approval, which once again is higher than Obama's approval at the same time in his presidency, when he went on to win re-election rather comfortably. Not only that, but today's approval polls have come out, and Trump for the second day in a row is sitting high at 51%. And here's some more good news. If you want to see what's really going on here, look at this. Trump and Biden are now neck and neck in the single most Democrat state in the union, Minnesota. Minnesota is as blue of a state as they come. It has not voted for a Republican candidate since 1972. Not even Massachusetts is historically that liberal, if you can believe it. The polls coming out of Minnesota have Trump and Biden tied in a state that hasn't voted Republican in 50 freaking years. A Trafalgar poll has the race tied at 46% each, and this is corroborated by a recent Emerson poll of over 700 likely voters, which found Biden with 50% support and Trump with 47%. That is within the margin of error, which is plus or minus 3.6 percentage points. Now, this isn't a coincidence. Okay, because Minnesota is, of course, the home of Minneapolis. And Minneapolis is where George Floyd was killed and where all the race riots started. And we've talked about that Princeton study that found that race riots in America consistently make our nation more conservative. An assistant professor at the Department of Politics at Princeton recently published a paper concluding that the political effects of riots consistently benefit the political right. What he did is he ended up looking at 137 violent protests that followed Martin Luther King's killing in April 1968. And what he found was that if your county was proximate to the riots, then that county voted 6 to 8 percentage points more for the Republican candidate in the upcoming presidential election that followed than it did in the previous presidential election. Riots turn the nation to the right. Maybe we should have t-shirts like that. Riots turn the nation to the right. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Minnesota. Minneapolis is virtually imploded as a result of the race riots and all the chaos and looting and destruction that blew up after the whole George Floyd killing there. And surrounding Minnesotans are like, I may not like him, but Trump and the Republicans are the only things standing in between me and these rioting and looting thugs. I'm voting Trump. And again, this is happening in the single most liberal state in the entire nation, at least when it comes to voting for president. So if Trump wins Minnesota or is on course for winning Minnesota, gang, this election is over. No amount of stuttering from Joe Biden is going to save him. And certainly no amount of gaslighting from the mainstream Marxist media that no one listens to anymore is going to change anything. As we come to the end of this week, these 2 weeks, in fact, that were supposed to be the greatest 2 weeks of Joe Biden's political career, as the smoke clears, to the shock of the pollsters and pundits alike, Trump is standing with one of his highest approval ratings of the summer, all the while the Democrats suffered one of the most embarrassing and humiliating weeks imaginable. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on how Black Lives Matter murals continue to get defaced and destroyed all across the nation as Americans are increasingly rebelling against the far left. You are not going to want to miss that. So make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.